My name is Diane Lee, and I am president of the San Francisco Young Democrats. Welcome to the first Assembly District 17 debate of 2014. First of all, I'd like to thank our candidates, Supervisors David Chiu and Supervisor David Campos. From the San Francisco Chronicle, Maria Salvato.
The conversation that's been ongoing around the country really about the state's minimum wage. Would you support an increase in the state minimum wage? And if so, by how much an hour? And would you rather see that pass through a ballot measure or in the legislature?
Well, I think that it's always, you would hope that when you elect people to do their job, that they would do it and that they would pass legislation that actually makes it so that we have the right minimum wage. I'm actually proud that, as far as I know, I'm the first member of the Board of Supervisors that is on record as saying that not only should we increase the minimum wage, which I'm glad that Mayor Lee and others agree we should, but that we actually need to be very clear about what that amount should be. And I think the amount should be $15 an hour, which would actually put San Francisco as the first city in the country to make that a reality. And I do think that the state of California needs to follow suit. You cannot deal with the affordability crisis that we face in San Francisco, this tale of two cities, unless you make it so that people who work full-time, who are struggling, can actually make enough money to live in San Francisco. We gave Twitter a $22 million or $100 million tax break, depending on how you count it. Don't we at least have a responsibility to make sure that working people can afford to live in San Francisco?
So, a couple of things. First of all, I was the first member of the Board of Supervisors to support after the mayor mentioned he was considering raising the minimum wage, to say we need to do this. I also agree with David Campos that we should bring the minimum wage to $15 per hour. The very first job I had between high school and college, I was a janitor in a local public school making $3 an hour. And we know that that is completely unlivable this day. Years later, I worked in the city as a civil rights attorney. And I represented sweatshop workers who were being paid $1 to $2 an hour, who were being abused for their wages. I worked with day laborers in the Mission who were also abused around their wages. Let me also say a couple of things. The suggestion around the so-called chamber line, and that gentleman I'd actually not met, but I want to say I do think people in San Francisco are sick and tired of these sorts of attacks back and forth in how we engage in our politics. And let me be clear, I am in nobody's pocket. And I also want to say, of my donors who contributed to me, most of them are small donors, like everyone in this room, who represent every aspect of our assembly district. And I also want to say, I have taken on the chamber on many fights for working people. This past year, I passed first in the country legislation to give workers the right to ask their employers to take care of their family members, to take care of their loved ones, to take care of their sick ones. You read the newspapers, I took the chamber on that. I led the fight from the Board of Supervisors against the luxury condos, 88 Washington. David waited in the wings until a month out before he started talking about how important this was. And I have taken on the $60 billion plastic water bottle industry, the $16 billion yellow page industry that is supporting David Campos in this race right now.
David Chiu always talks about how we have the same voting record, and we have a lot of similar votes until the Chamber of Commerce comes in and opposes something, then he goes with them. The first major difference of opinion that David and I had, and we actually were elected as progressives in 2008, was over the healthcare loophole legislation that David, you co-sponsored to sort of prevent the stealing of money that's happening by businesses where they charge a fee and they actually never provide that money and use it for healthcare.
Thank you.
You co-sponsored and then changed your mind when the chamber told you.
Let's move on.
We having fun yet?
Yeah.
So, the issues at City College have been dominating headlines for a long time now here in San Francisco, and I'm wondering, as an assembly member, what you would do to ensure that the college stays open and accredited.
So, first and foremost, I wouldn't be here, none of us would be here without higher education. Every student in our city deserves this, and we have to save the system for our 90,000 students a year, for the $300 million a year that this means for jobs in our local economy. First and foremost, we need significant accountability of the AAJC, the commission that made a horrible decision for San Francisco. They need to be reined in. We also need leaders in Sacramento who are going to be fighting for our higher education system. So I believe we have to reform our student loan systems in California, because otherwise my wife and I will be paying her student loans for the next 15 years of our marriage. We also have to do a better job of linking our higher education system to our top companies here. I believe that our city college system, our SF state system, has not had the relationships that we need with our local employers. And I've been hammering our employers to do a better job of making sure that our graduates from our city college system, from our state system, have a pathway to know that they're going to be here for the rest of their lives. And I think that has to be a vision of where we're going to go.
Thank you.
I think that in many respects, what's happening with City College is symbolic of this larger issue of disparity in this tale of two cities. Because City College is actually the way that so many people who come from my background in the Mission, where we have thousands of young people going to the Mission campus, City College is their door to opportunity. I am proud that I just got a call yesterday from the representative of AFT 2121, the union that represents the faculty at City College. They called to tell me that they have given me their sole endorsement because they recognize that I have been fighting for City College before it was popular. That I was talking about the need to not only keep it open, but to keep it open in its current condition without getting rid of any programs. That speaks for itself. They know who has been there with them in the trenches. And they know that this election is important because more than talk, what we need in Sacramento is an assembly member who is going to roll up his sleeves or her sleeves and fight the interests that are trying to close City College. It's corporate interests that are trying to privatize the services that people are going to get in City College for free or a low amount. This, in many respects, is a fight about the heart of San Francisco. Because if City College closes, or if it actually remains open in a way that is way different than it looks like today, then I think that we're losing a part of San Francisco, and we cannot let that happen.
What can you do in the assembly? Are there any specifics?
I think first and foremost, we need more revenues for our schools. And raising taxes, finding new revenues are difficult. 2 years ago, I was proud to propose that we change our city's business tax. We have had a payroll tax that was a regressive tax that treated small businesses the same as our largest, most profitable businesses. And I was proud to work for the better part of a year to create the consensus to create a progressive corporate tax rate to make sure our most profitable companies were paying more, and that we would see hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 years to our local general fund. We need to be able to do that for our higher education system. We need to do that with amendments to Prop 13, by taxing oil companies, by taxing tobacco, and making sure we're getting our revenues.
Thank you. Supervisor Campos, you guys have both touched on the fact that you have had similar votes on some things. One very notable split was on the issue of whether Sheriff Maroney should keep his job. He's currently serving probation after pleading charges from a domestic dispute. I'd like to hear why you decided to support the sheriff to keep his job in that situation.
Thank you for that question. And let me begin by saying that There is no question that what Sheriff McCready did is deplorable and horrific. And there is simply no excuse for it. And on a very personal level, you know, as an individual, I know how important and how difficult the issue of domestic violence is. I know people in my family that have gone through that, and it's very painful. And I am proud that as a supervisor, before and after this vote, that I have worked very hard to make sure that we have the right funding on domestic violence. Now, that said, the question, unfortunately for me, was a question of whether or not, in this case, the standard of official misconduct was met. And as horrible as this conduct is, having seen the evidence, I just felt that I had to agree with the president of the Ethics Commission that it did not constitute official misconduct, as horrible as it is. But let me say this, that we have to continue to work on domestic violence, and I am proud that I have been working on that issue throughout my tenure, and as recently as a couple of months ago, I have been working with domestic violence advocates to increase funding and to actually bring domestic violence funding to communities that have never gotten, like the transgender community, the transgender Latino community.
Supervisor Chiu, can you talk to us about why you did not support, or why you voted against that?
20 years ago, someone close to me was in an abusive relationship. And that opened up my eyes in my early 20s to this issue. I served on 2 domestic violence boards. I've worked in the city as a criminal prosecutor to make sure that everyone is safe. And there are some who may want to put out legalistic reasons why they may wanted to have supported their friend from not being removed from office. But I think as an elected official, we have a duty to stand up for victims of domestic violence. If you look at our voting record, David Campos and I have cast about 8,000 votes. 98% of them have been identical, but this particular vote, I think, shows a difference. I happen to think it's progressive to stand up for victims of domestic violence.
Right on.
You don't have to tell me how important this issue is, and on a very personal level, I have had conversations with people in my family who have gone through it. I think that what we need in Sacramento is to make sure that we dedicate ourselves to ensuring that we have the right level of focus, not only on domestic violence, but in all issues that impact women in San Francisco. And I am proud of the work that I have done. I see Hillary Ronan, who has been working with me with Planned Parenthood to make sure that we protect women's rights in the city.
Let's shift gears a little bit. San Francisco's Google bus controversy has been dominating the news for months here. Supervisor Chiu, do you support the recent compromise that the SFMTA approved this week? And do you think the state should be more involved in regulating this issue?
So while I thought it was an important step for the acknowledgement of technology companies to work with our transit agency to pay something, I don't think that $1 per stop is enough. And in fact, because of that, over the past few weeks, I've been in conversations with the head of the MTA, with our chief financial officer, to figure out what we can do to lift this fee, because I happen to think that $1 doesn't cover the wear and tear on our roads, doesn't cover the cost of our bus shelters. And as I've said to technology leaders, we need them to give back to a city as we have assisted them. I do want to just take a moment, though, because David Campos earlier had talked about my support of the so-called Twitter tax break and the impact that this has had, and just point out that David Campos has actually supported 5 similar tax breaks, including, he was the co-sponsor to Ross Mercurini's tax breaks for Twitter stock options, for the stock options of the technology companies who are here. That tax break, $34 million, millions of dollars more than the tax break that he has accused me of.
So, the The thing about your position on the Google bus, it's interesting because in the press release that the mayor sent out, your name was all over it, David, and every word that was quoted in there was in support of what the mayor was doing, not a single word that you were in disagreement. And also, where were you at the MTA? I was the only member of the Board of Supervisors who went to the MTA Board of Directors to say $1 a stop is not enough. It's one thing to say it here, it's one thing to say it in City Hall. And as far as the Twitter tax break, it's interesting, because as early as 2012, when you filled out the questionnaire for young Democrats, you were boasting about being, a big supporter of the Twitter tax break. The Twitter tax break is nowhere to be found on your website. Why is that? Because I think that you know that that was a mistake. That the idea of giving Twitter a tax break of $22 million to $100 million, depending on how you calculate it, without actually requiring a community benefits agreement, is not good public policy. And not surprising, the very citizens advisory group that actually oversees the tax break just said that the promises they made have not been met. Now, you talk about this stock option. You know that what we were doing at the Board of Supervisors was to codify the practice of the city at that time. There was no practice of the city giving tax breaks to corporations like they did to Twitter, and you know that. And in terms of the Google buses, I think it's unfair that we charge them $1 at bus stop, but if any of us overstays in front of a Muni bus stop, we're not going to pay $1. We're going to pay $271. That's not fair.
So I think what David has just described about how we've tackled the Google question really is a reflection of our difference in leadership. I'm trying to work behind the scenes to get things done, to deliver results. He's grandstanding in front of the cameras. Now let me also say that a few years ago when we were debating these various tax policies, we were in the midst of the Great Recession. Does anyone remember that? There are people in this room, I have had too many friends who were unemployed a few years ago. And the changes that we made in this city in the last few years have created 42,000 jobs, have ensured that we have a $7 billion budget with $2.7 billion going to our social services and to our human services.
Thank you, David.
And 3 out of these 4 jobs, not in technology. We've done a good job. We've needed to move to where we are today.
Thank you. I want to move into that issue at the state level. Even after the realignment of the criminal justice system, which moved responsibility for many offenders down to the local level, California continues to face a crowding crisis in its prisons and a court order to reduce that population. How do you think the state should deal with that moving forward?
Well, first of all, I do think that we have a responsibility to make sure that the population in our prisons is treated with dignity and respect, and they have living standards that reflect the values of our society. With respect to the jail in San Francisco, let me say that I am proud that we were the ones who had the courage to actually call a hearing on this issue, and we called upon the budget and legislative analysts to do a study that they just released, and that study alone saves the city $100 million. Because what the study shows is that we do not need the size of a prison that is being proposed. My own personal view is that we should let facts in this case decide what happens in San Francisco. If we have to build a new jail, it should be as small as possible. But if we can get away without building a new jail, I would rather use the $298 million that would be spent on actually using that for affordable housing for working people and families in San Francisco. I think the state of California has its priorities backwards, that we are building an entire, prison after prison, and we are 49th in the country in per pupil spending is a reflection of how we have misguided values in Sacramento, and the person who represents San Francisco has to be the one pushing the envelope and saying, we owe it to our kids to make education the priority that it should be.
So what do you think should be done at the state level to deal with this?
So as someone who practiced civil rights law, we know we have a system that is fundamentally unfair. Part of the reason why I'm not working at the San Francisco DA's office today is I was just tired of seeing case after case of young people, particularly young people of color, who didn't have options, who are stuck in our system. I have 3 things I want to suggest. First of all, we need sentencing reform. My campaign team, we are working on a state ballot measure to reduce nonviolent crimes, drug possession, petty theft, etc., to be downgraded from felonies to misdemeanors, to use those savings to make sure that we are paying for our mental health and substance abuse and affordable housing. Second, we need to legalize marijuana. I think it's disappointing that San Francisco is being beaten by Seattle and by Denver when it comes to who gets what we need. And the third thing we need to do a better job of bringing back our reentry population. I was proud to work with Supervisor Mary Cohen and Supervisor Jane Kim on their legislation with my former civil rights organization on legislation to ban the box that you have to check if you have been convicted of a felony in the past. What you did in the past should not be relevant to how you see the possibility in your future here in San Francisco.
I'm a former police commissioner, and I can say, and I'm proud to say, that I don't believe that any member of the Board of Supervisors has done more in the area of public safety than my office and I have. And one of the things that I want to point to, and it's something that I want to bring to Sacramento and expand, we have worked with actually our police officers in the Mission Station, who actually are part of the gang unit, for the last 3 years to get people who are involved in gangs out of that life. And it's something that we work quietly with them to make happen. And we have helped more than 12 of these individuals change their lives. We need to do more of that at the state level.
Thank you. Given cities like San Francisco the option to extend their bar hours until 4 a.m., do you support that type of legislation?
So one of the things just that is wonderful and special about our city is our nightlife. In fact, I think we all know it. Hopefully we all partake of it after this debate tonight. And I'm proud of that. And I have worked closely with my neighborhoods in my district that have the most intensification of nightlife. And I'm proud of the fact that a few years ago, we had a lot of shootings. We had a lot of negative activity on our streets. And today, the situation in my district is much improved. I would be happy, and in fact I told Senator Leno that I am open to his proposal to extend hours. I think it is a conversation we need to have with our neighborhoods. I certainly would be willing to consider a pilot in a portion of the city. But I think we have to make sure that this is a dialogue with all of our stakeholders to make sure that everyone is safe and that we have a vibrant and healthy nightlife. And I do want to mention one thing about public safety. David mentioned that it was work that he has done in the Mission to make his community more safe. When I go to the Mission, I typically talk to any one of thousands of residents who've signed a petition about public safety issues in the Mission. The fact that crime has not been tackled, the fact that we have serious quality of life issues in the Mission. And what I heard repeatedly was that the district supervisor was not focused on these issues in the way that all of us need to be focused in our districts.
I think David Chiu is talking about the Clean Up the Plaza petition, which is actually essentially disguised to get a luxury condo project. So clearly you would be on this. You would be on their side on that one, David, for sure. But let me talk about nightlife, because I do think that there's a big difference here. As a gay man, I believe that we should be proud of our nightlife. And more than just being open to what Senator Leno is proposing, we should be supporting it. And one of the problems that I have with your policy views on this issue, David, is that I think it is NIMBY. I think it doesn't recognize that for so many of us, especially in the queer community, you know, for us, the process of getting to know, understanding who we were, was something that actually at times required going to a bar and socializing with people in that setting.
And for San Francisco to have in the state assembly someone who doesn't get it, and who not only doesn't get it, but who actually has tried to curtail and limit nightlife and entertainment in San Francisco, that is going in the wrong direction. And as a queer man, I certainly don't want to see that, and we're not going to.
A group, not necessarily a minority in number, but gender inequality is still a huge issue. How do we address that issue in education, particularly in the area of science, technology, and engineering?
So first of all, I want to actually just take a moment to give a shout out to my campaign team. I have an entirely woman campaign team helping to run this effort. Nicole Dursey, thank you, Jen Court, my campaign fundraiser who is here, my field director who is here. I have spent the past 6 years moving forward legislation to really break new barriers, whether it be first in the country legislation brought to me by women advocates to give workers the right to take care of their families, whether it be making sure that I was pushing increases in budgets for domestic violence programs, making sure that women are serving in more roles and seats at our city commissions. On the issue of how we make sure in the technology sector, one of the sets of programs that I have been very supportive of is pushing our technology companies to do a better job of diversifying their ranks, because right now, their companies don't reflect what San Francisco is about. And in fact, over the last couple of weeks, I've been having conversations with organizations that are teaching young girls how to code, that are helping young women to break the barriers when it comes to being engineers, comes to being scientists. My mother set this example for me. She got a master's in statistics, and she was the role model in my life for what we need to do for all of us to make sure that, particularly as men, that we are breaking the barriers for gender equality and making our society, our community, equal for all.
Thank you.